Hey guys, Frankie V here. It's been a while since I did an update as to where we were or where we are with Casa. So I thought I'd take a quick flyabout as to where I left off last and give you an idea of where we're at and where we're going. Okay, so anyways, still a problem in UE4 as far as getting things done quickly is materials. There's still a bit of a, a sore spot with me at the moment, as it does take a fair amount of work, time, and effort to come up with just the right materials when you can just kind of drag and drop and mix and match. Hopefully in the not too distant future. It's something that you can actually do in UDK pretty rather efficiently. As it stands, we're kind of having to take a considerable amount of time to build up our material resources, and as well as take advantage of the ones that are made available through Unreal 4. For example, this building in front of you here is actually a Unreal 4 material, and as you can see, it looks rather nice. Now, if we compare that to something over here, that's actually not too bad, but it's kind of flat and kind of bland. And of course, as we move closer, we start to lose that resolution, and it kind of looks blurry, say, as opposed to moving over here, where things are still rather sharp in detail. I did manage to make a rather nice stucco type of effect that turned out rather well, shall we say. At any rate, as we sort of kind of pan around a bit, you can see that we still have very much the urban terror art flavor to it at the moment. Still a lot of work to be done as far as light balancing goes. Every time you change a texture or a material or add brightness to the scene, you got to kind of go back and readjust your lighting solution. So you're kind of up, kind of down as to brightness and contrast. Certainly if you kind of start looking at each of the version steps that we're going along with, there's certainly a large and broad range of different types of lighting effect, and most of the variations are caused by the different types of materials that we're working on. So, for example, if we're looking down this in this area here, the ground or the cobblestone area here doesn't look really too good, but that's because this is just a single layered material type. Now this here would be kind of like if you had just making a map for 4.1 or whatever, you're making material type, you would add a shader with a single path node to it, and that just basically draws the photo source material onto it. So that's kind of more of a photo source type of material that's applied to it versus the stuccoing effect that we got going on here, as well as the wood material on the top. So depending on the material that you're using, particularly as in regards to physics-based materials, you can have a very large deviation in I guess you would call it lighting, pool lighting. You know, it looks good here, it doesn't look too good over there. So you got to kind of improve or adjust things more or less on the fly. Your photo source is too bright, you got to go into the material and adjust that too as well. So all this stuff sort of plays against one another as you try to find the right color balance, the lighting balance, and it takes a fair amount of time. And I would say at the moment, for just kind of nesting, figuring out where all the buttons are, what does this word mean, and so forth. So say for example, shadows in UE4, you would think that you would say, compared to say to 3ds Max, I have an adjustment I can make to the light that's called shadow density, which will either make it heavier or darker, and then a color tone swatch that I can change the color depth. In UE4, this is part of what's called the environmental color, meaning that if we can use a yellow tinted lighting or orange to give it. I've added a little bit more yellow tone to the lighting to kind of diffuse it a bit, and I can add that, say, color tone to the shadows too as well, or I can make it gray. So there's no real direct reference to things, stuff like this. You know, you go through it and you go, well, where's the color? Where's the shadow information? It doesn't have that box that says, here's your shadow information. Everything is environmental, so the shadowing effect is actually an environmental color. It makes it a little bit more difficult when people start using their own kind of languages. Another cool thing that with Unreal 4, which makes it a very, very efficient engine, is as you can see, I can grab that window frame up there and I can move that kind of out a bit. That has this frame, the window frame, the glass, the shadow box in behind it, the curtains, which are all mapped slightly different, so I can change the color tone as well. So I'm going to make some different background colors too as well, to kind of add some variations. These are all instanced objects, meaning that the memory footprint for one frame is equal to the other. So as we so if we have two windows here, in practicality it's just one window. If I move, can I again move enough? Yeah. So I got 3 being rendered in the scene here. This window frame setup here is a part of the same instance object, but with the shutters closed. So that's so what you see rendered is 3 windows, but memory footprint wise, it's 1 window. So you can keep doing that and keep doing that until, let's see if we can get here. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 windows rendered, 1 window. Same thing with trees. If you have a forest full of trees, it's 1 tree. So it's a very the engine software does what an engine software should do in taking those kind of day-to-day chores that you would, older engines would normally do manually. It does it for you automatically. And another example of that as to efficiency is, let's take this and we're going to only show the selected is the train object, that I'll then render that into wireframe. And as we kind of move around, you can see that the object density changes. It tessellates on the fly. Of course, we have a lot of area being rendered all at once, so it wouldn't be that efficient, but it only renders for you, and it does it for you without any need to interact unless you want to interact with it, and it keeps things a lot more efficient without having to worry about it. So you can work on your scene and know that by the time you got everything that you want into it, into your map, that it's going to do everything that it can to maintain the high frame rates that you want as far as performance goes. Performance wise, I haven't come across anything that would I would consider to be any less than what one experience is currently experiencing in 4.1. There obviously is that hardware limitation factor to consider as far as how old your equipment is, as well as to things like are you running OpenGL, DirectX, and so forth. But a good example of PC optimization is the Mac announcement of the Metal API. Now, if you see the demo itself is pretty darn impressive. Where the guy shakes a bush and tons of butterflies come flying out on it, and this is all being done on an iPad and designed for mobile devices at the same time as it is for the PC. So certainly a lot of improvements can be made CPU side as far as processing goes. So these are the small little details that are done better in UE4 than, say, as far as UDK goes. I've had some experience with UDK. I cannot give you a kind of a one-on-one critique of the two. UDK was rather efficient, but overall, I think my impression is UE4 is a lot more efficient. I haven't had any kind of major performance issues between the two. As for that matter, I haven't seen any major performance issues and differences between UDK UE4 and FS Tech 1, which had some performance enhancements, obviously over above the IDTech 3 design. So as far as those with the lower end machines, be assured that's something we're kind of proud of being able to supply a game that is not all about eye candy, and as historically Urban Terror has always been simplistic about its art design overall. It looks darn good for what it is, and I don't think there's really any need to go to the extremes as to what one would consider as being a next generation design. For us, this is next generation design. But what we're trying to do is to make use of technology that is old but it's never been used in a new design environment. So the FS Tech 1 design was a good example between old engine design versus updating to at least 2004, which is when OpenGL 2 was introduced, which allowed us to increase the mesh density and increase performance. Comparison-wise, a scene that would run, say, 200 frames per second, 250 frames per second, would run about 400 to 600 frames per second with higher density in FS Tech 1. We actually made a mistake once by dropping the PK3 PK3 Desert Eagle, which is substantially higher than the one that was in 4.2, and everybody's FPS for a while kind of tanked by about 20%. So it doesn't take much to get a little bit more performance. As long as we're not thinking about trying to maintain the performance envelope that was available in 1999, or was it 2001? Well, whenever Quake 3 came out, and if you had a 64 meg system, and they didn't have GPUs, they called them graphics accelerator, like the Voodoo 1 and the Voodoo 2 cards. No GPL there. It was all OpenGL, and that's how you got your speed. And there was a big distinct difference between how things were being software rendered versus all of a sudden you had this hardware equivalent and ability to move things around quickly. So tech-wise, I think we can keep that performance margin, make things look half decent, and not drive away guys with older equipment. Now, that being said, there is a version of the shooter sample that comes with Unreal 4. We'll be using it as part of our framework, and somebody has compiled a version of that apparently is downloadable somewhere. If you look around for it, fortunately I kind of lost the URL, so you're going to have to do a little bit of detective work to find it, but it is out there, and it's based on the Unreal 4 engine, and it is part of the framework that we're really using. So if you want to test your gear now to make sure that you're up and running for Urban Terror HD, you can certainly find that and try it out yourself if you wish. And that will give you a pretty good idea of how things are going. Also, with the announcement of Unreal Tournament being rebooted, since we're running and operating on the same platform as Epic is, as part of their development of the Unreal Tournament franchise, once again, a lot of the things that they will be developing, we can obviously make use of within our own game framework. So there wouldn't be any need to really reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So if they if they come up with a half decent menuing system that we don't have to repeat, like for example they put in buttons and stuff that allows to actually decrease the resolution as well as decrease the overall quality of the game for the benefits of performance, no point in reinventing the wheel. We'll just snag that and we'll tailor it for our game design, so it kind of fits in with our decor, so to speak. So that's something to look forward to as well. Also, map-wise, third-party map inclusion has always been allowed. There's not really going to be any change in that area in the foreseeable future. So since they are also going to be on the same framework as us, then the two mapping pathways, no promises made, but hopefully they'll be the same. So we can increase the amount of community maps that are available for our players based on the two games. So if you want to make a map, hopefully it'll run just as well on Unreal Tournament as it will run on Urban Terror HD. Okay, what else do we got to fill in here? Time-wise, we got a little bit that we can fill in a little bit more here, I guess. Okay. So I added in a bit of a tower that I was working on a different map. I don't think I'm ever going to finish that off. So I kind of would like to fill in the back a little bit more to get that little bit more parallax feeling to go with. Obviously, we need a lot more work done to the mountains. You got trees that are obviously, that's photo sourced. Yeah, okay. It doesn't really look like a mountain range, so it didn't really work out as well. I converted a landscape material to optimize it down, but apparently you don't have to do that. So I obviously have to redo the mountain range too over again. But I like that parallax effect. So if we kind of go down here, you got a little bit more depth. You have buildings, a building behind the building, and then a mountain range behind it, which then gives it a bit better sense of depth as far as parallax goes when you move to and fro. So I think that would be a plus too as well. Yeah, flowers, as you can see, I put in some flowers. I did some painting on the terrain. Still not too happy with the terrain. It looks like a carpet of rocks rather than ground. Once again, a lot of that is due to material manipulation. So these are the kind of things that I'm working against. It's not really a problem, but what you think looks good turns to mush after a while. You go to bed, you come up, you wake up the next morning, you take a look at it, and you go, well, that's not really that good. What you thought was the most greatest thing in the world really didn't work out on you. Terrain is awesome. I love it because you got this little divot here between where people are going to be moving to and from, and it kind of rises up, so you got this separation between ground. This is what I like. You got ground, you got dirt and gravel and grime, you have building, you have a disconnect between these three elements. So it looks a little, this obviously is not what you would call realistic rendering, but from a visible viewing standpoint, it is realistic as far as you need. So here's another example, having this borderline that cuts off between the two areas. What I'm not a big fan of is, this needs some work here, is this straight down shot to the ground, ends on a hard line into a different area. So there's this definitely this big distinction between the two. So as you can see, the stones of how they look like the building basically guillotined it, came down and chopped it. So I want to get in here with maybe change the ground to a terrain so I can get some dirt effect into it. What I was happy with what turned out, and still need some work on. This area is kind of nice too as well. You can still quite easily walk over stuff, so I don't see this really affecting power sliding and so forth. Corrections that can be made though once we actually get into practical testing to actually see if we need to make adjustments. This is just an art design point at this time. Get it in, pulse, do what you think looks cool, then get it into testing, and then make adjustments based on player feedback. So if they kind of say, well, this really does screw up power sliding a lot, like they just can't get it to slide it down here or down here, then it's easy enough to kind of brush it until you can actually start get guys sliding down it. I liked how this kind of doesn't look as claustrophobic as it used to. You know, it's this it's the same volume of space, but you know, it was just a couple of strokes with the brush, and that pushed the terrain down a little bit far enough where we have that nice little easement that I like between the left and right. We got some grass growing in here to add some separation between the ground and the building, and once again, we're not after realism here. We're after something that looks realistic as to expectations, so to speak. Kind of like this area too as well. Still a fair amount of work to do material-wise. Lighting effect, I'm waiting for somebody to come up with some half-decent tutorial on how to do proper color balancing. That's the word I've been looking for a while, because the color balancing is still a little off. But I think what we got is a rather nice replacement for Casa for Urban Terror HD. And hopefully we might be able to do a few more like this. Looking forward to seeing what third parties come up with. There's plenty of room in our world for everything from, you know, Minecraft type maps to full-blown next-gen slash this thing's going to eat your GPU, PCU maps, so we can have a lot of different flavors where players with various different types of hardware specification can be a little bit more selective about which map works best for them, so we can, you know, we can have both sides of it. And that is something that I'm certainly looking forward to, because I am a eye candy fanatic, and I would love to see somebody go overboard with a map design that obviously as part of this team I really am not in a position to do. So hopefully that's enough of an update for you. By all means, if you have any questions, put them in the comments section, or head over to our site, and the Unreal 4 section is Unreal 4. The Urban Terror HD section is up and running, and feel free to ask any of your questions in there, and we'll try our best to make sure it gets to the right person on the team who can answer the question the best for you. And until next time, we'll call this one done for you.